Hey y'all, it's Carly. Welcome back to High Country Homesteading. Today I'm going to be showing you all of my seedlings that I started indoors for this 2023 spring gardening season. We're going to go over some successes, some failures, and definitely one big mistake. So here is my current setup. We've got this structure that was just in our basement, holding on to some boxes and things we don't use always. So I set this up in my dining room area, and this is where all the seeds are. Up here, I just have all of my supplies. Here's my seeds. I got a watering can, extra supplies. There's fertilizers back here, and then there's some flowers, like flower bulbs that are waiting to be planted in the spring. And what I started with was one box of lights, so that covered 2 of these areas, came with 4 lights, and there's 2 lights in each. I started with 5 of the smaller seed starting trays that come with the humidity domes. And then I ended up buying a second set of everything. And then I ended up buying these larger trays with the larger 4-inch by 4-inch pots. So I'll go over all of that, but I will lay all this stuff out on the table and we will go over each crop one by one. And I'll give you a breakdown of things that were successful, things that were not so successful, and lessons that I've definitely learned and will hopefully be better at next year. All right, now that I have this all laid out on the table, this looks like so much. It didn't even look like that much on here, but laying it all out, I can't believe that I did all this year. So let's go one by one and I'll show you how everything fared. So I'm filming this in late April. My first frost date is supposed to be around May 1st, but in the 10-day forecast, it's still looking pretty cold with lows in the 30s, so I don't think May 1st is going to happen. My principle when planting these things, just because I was a beginner, was that if anything said a range of start between 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost day, I erred on the side of 6 rather than 8, just because I knew I had limited space on here and I wasn't going to be able to up pot everything that grew too much, or I knew I didn't have, the infrastructure. At the time, I didn't have all of these bigger pots, and I knew I would have to buy everything, and I knew it would get pretty expensive. So I erred on the side of 6 weeks. So technically, all of these things could be about 2 weeks more than they are right now. So mine may be smaller than what they could be, and maybe next year, now that I do have a lot of the items, I will start them sooner. So the very first thing I planted, and you might have seen, was this rosemary. This was back towards the end of February. I did have everything sprout, and they are very tiny, so I don't know if they've just run out of room. Nothing's really root bound under here, but it hasn't died. It's just, I think rosemary is supposed to be pretty slow growing. So I don't know, once we plant this out, maybe because it has more space, it'll flourish. Some other things that we have in here is celery. I planted a bunch of celery. Some of it's looking pretty healthy and standing up straight, and some of it's flopping over pretty good. I don't know if it's just become heavy. I definitely could have thinned this a lot more, but I honestly didn't do a lot of thinning because I figured I would just plant select ones later on when I plant them in the ground. But like here, everything back here is flopping over pretty good. So next year, one thing I'm noting is now that I know the germination rate of a lot of things, I will probably plant a lot less per cell. But at the time, I only had 5 of these trays, and I knew I wanted to get the most bang for my buck, so I filled it with a lot of seeds. But now I know I can probably cool down on that. So I do have some pretty, I think, successful celery, and we'll plant out the best ones. We certainly don't need all of this. Some other thing that's doing well is this row of thyme. Let me get the celery out of the way, but this thyme's been taking off. It smells so good. But this thyme germinated and started rising up very well. So I'm pretty pleased with that. And one thing I'm pretty pleased about are my onions. I've trimmed these onions about 3 times so far, and they seem to be doing well. Their stems are getting thicker every time that I trim them. And they seem to be doing well. So right here I have some Alyssa Craig onions. I also have some bunching onions, so just some green onion. And then these are the ruby red, which you can see they've got their little purple stems. So I'm pretty happy with these. I have some here, this tray, and then I also have more on this tray. And I'm very happy with these. I've just been trimming them down a couple inches every time they got a little bit too tall. And I hope that they transplant well. So this is where I started my artichoke, and they are empty now because I've had to up-pot those. So I'll show you what those look like. I ended up putting them in these 4-inch pots, and I would say this is a pretty good success. I have 2 plants per pot in here, and they've been growing pretty well. They did get slightly yellow right before I transplanted them, which is why I did so, as well as them getting pretty big. But I would say artichoke, pretty good success. I'm excited to plant these out. I know they get really big, and I've never seen an artichoke grow before, so I'm pretty excited to see what happens there. Another success, that's something that I heavily seeded, and I probably should have pruned, but I didn't, are snapdragons. I would say I had a huge germination rate with snapdragons. I have some here, then I have a little bit extra here, but everything seems to be growing really well, and I'll definitely plant these around the garden anywhere that I can find a place. Right, let's talk about tomatoes. Tomatoes have been very tricky for me. This is my tray of tomatoes. As you can see, they've gotten quite dark. They have really dark leaves, and their stems have turned pretty purple. These, and I'll insert a clip, even after a month of growing, were teeny tiny, and they were really stunted. I hadn't put any fertilizer in this. I was just letting them grow, but they seemed really tiny and stunted to me. And then after some time, they started turning really dark. So what I now know that I believe is a phosphorus deficiency. So I need to get some bone meal and try to get these to turn a little bit brighter. You can see leaves right here, pretty purple. So they were pretty stunted. They've grown a little bit. They finally have some second and third sets of leaves, but for a while it was just their first set of leaves. So I was pretty upset about those. So what I did was about a month after starting the first tomatoes, I started some more because I thought those were probably a goner. So I ended up planting more of each kind, and these that I started in the big pots and I gave them lots of room and nutrients to grow are doing amazing. They've got bright leaves. They grew like triple the amount of time that the other ones grew. So these plants are a lot healthier, and I'm so glad that I took the time to start some over. I thought they would be behind, but these are way bigger than mine over there. So next year I will probably start my tomatoes in these bigger pots. I also think that I'm going to need to fertilize my tomatoes next year, probably with a liquid fertilizer from Neptune's Harvest is what I'm going to try. But I am just glad that I have these really healthy looking ones. And that should be good enough for a first year of tomatoes. I did just do an experiment where I transplanted some of the dark leaved purple ones into pots with fresh soil just to see if the replenishing of nutrients would help turn them a little brighter again. So I just did this yesterday. So we will see if these turn a little brighter or if they stay dark and purple. But you can see compared to the one next to them, these are just so much more vibrant looking. These are both beefsteaks. and you can definitely tell the difference in the size and the vibrancy. All right, moving on. I have a green stock that I'm going to dedicate most to strawberries this year. So these are the strawberries that I started from seed. They seem to be doing well. They're still pretty tiny, but they are very bright green and vibrant looking. So I'm going to transplant these out as soon as I can into my green stock. I also bought some roots. And then I'm also probably going to buy some strawberry starts and just put them all in the same green stock and compare how everything does. On this tray are most of my melons and also cucumbers. So this is called an Ashley cucumber right here. This is the National Pickling Cucumber. I have watermelon, which I had 3 watermelon pop up. I have cantaloupe, which did terrible. I only have 1 cantaloupe that's trying to come up, though it's stuck in its seed right now. And then I have honeydew, where I have 1, 2, 3 honeydews come up. So I did just over here planted some more just to see if I could get a little bit more out of there. I also planted some more cosmos because these were looking a little bit sad, but I gave them a drink of water the other day and they perked up a little better. So now I have some extra cosmos that are going to be growing in case these don't transplant well. But I also have some cosmos over here that have been doing really good. So I'm pretty proud about that. But hopefully these cucumbers keep doing well and I get a few more melons would be really nice. One fail, and I don't know if it's something that I've done or it's just the nature of a nasturtium, but I feel like my nasturtium germination rate was really terrible. So I planted probably about 40 nasturtium seeds right here. And out of this red nasturtium, I only got 2 plants. And out of this peach nasturtium, I got 1, 2, 3, 4 plants. So that's a pretty terrible germination rate. Pretty disappointed about that because nasturtiums were something I really wanted for my garden this year just to help with pollination. So I ended up getting sent this biodome system from a lovely subscriber named Deb. I'll have a short video out about this soon, but I planted the same peach nasturtiums just to see if it was this setup that was the problem or the nasturtium that was the problem. So I planted the peach nasturtium and then I just picked up some generic colored nasturtiums from Walmart to see what would happen. And I planted 10 of them and I got 1, 2, 3 to sprout. And then on the ones that I bought from the store, I got 8 of them to sprout. So I know seeds aren't usually the problem, and they were new seeds. And I know maybe if they were older, seeds can be blamed, but it was definitely this pack of peach and this pack of red nasturtiums that I got from Eden Brothers that I'm not sure what was up with those. But nevertheless, I did end up also planting some carnations, and this is some aster. This is turning a little bit yellow. I don't know if it's supposed to look like that. I probably should be thinning these out, but with the flowers, I didn't really mind. In a few places, I've planted some zinnias. So this is the salmon color, and this is the Isabellina, which is like a very buttery yellow color. These are pretty leggy right here, so I don't know if it was a lighting problem compared to these zinnias. These are the Envy, Green Envy, and this is the Old Mexico. And these are a lot healthier looking. I did start these first, I believe, but these are a lot better looking than my ones over here. So maybe I just didn't hold the light to these as well. But we'll plant them in the ground and we'll see how they go. In this tray are some of my more cold hardy plants. Some are doing okay, some not. These are my tomatillos. These are just because I couldn't fit them in my all tomato tray. They're looking a little healthier than their counterparts. They're still pretty stunted growth, I think. And some of the stems are starting to turn purple. So They're probably in need of some phosphorus as well. I have a few eggplants that are looking okay. They're all still pretty tiny sprouts, but the germination on them at least was good, as well as Brussels sprout germination did pretty well. This is my cabbage. For some reason, this row did not fare well, but this row is going okay. They're starting to get a little yellow, so I think they're probably lacking some nutrients. I don't know how these are gonna go because I know they like the cold. I probably should plant them out right now before it starts to warm up, but we're almost done with our garden beds, so I have to wait until those are filled. But I'll probably be planting these out soon just so they have a lot more room to grow, and maybe they're just too stunted here. I don't think roots are really a problem. They're not like sticking out the bottom, only the tomatillos a little bit. So I don't know, we'll plant these out and see what happens. All right, my last small tray I still have is a lot of lettuce and kale and some spices. So here's my butter crunch lettuce that's looking pretty good. I have a row of iceberg. I have some kale. These are all going to finish out my green stock that I already have some spinach planted in. And then for spices, I have some dill right here that seems to be doing good. Sage, for some reason I had one sprout and it died. This one did not sprout at all. And this one has a teeny tiny sprout coming up. So we'll see if that works out. Also, my basil, for some reason, is teeny tiny. And I'm not sure why that's not growing because I planted this lemon basil as well, and that seems to be doing really good. So we will plant this in the green stock. I'm going to probably plant my herbs with my strawberry green stock because I know I'm not going to have enough strawberry seeds to fill it. So the top half will be herbs and the bottom half will be strawberries. So we'll just have to plant these and see if they flourish. One of my big successes, I would say, is broccoli. Now these right here are my more stunted broccolis. I already have 18 broccoli outside in a garden bed that I will show you, but they were suffering and starting to get yellow when they were in the little trays. So I plant them out in here, one per, and they did amazing. So I will show you those out in the garden and insert a video. But I'm pretty proud about that. And the other thing I'm pretty proud about are my peppers. These peppers are looking really good. They also suffered from the same yellowing. So I put them in these 4-inch pots and I gave them a little bit of blood meal for some extra nitrogen since they were yellow. And these have done really well. I have so many peppers. I don't even eat this many peppers, so I don't know why this was the thing that decided to flourish. I was hoping it would be the tomatoes that did so well, but apparently it's peppers. So I have bell peppers, serranos, poblanos, and a lot of banana peppers. So these are doing really well, and I'm very happy that I was able to do this. And then the last thing that I have going on are beans. So I got compost from a local company, and Jess from Roots and Refuge says that if you want to test your compost to make sure it's not contaminated, you should plant beans. So I have a bush bean here and a jade bean, and I planted these just about a week ago, and they've come up really nicely. 2 came up, I planted 3. This one looked like it tried to come up, but I don't know, maybe it floated to the top when I watered it. But so far, they've come up nicely, and I think what she says to look for is any like red or brown discoloring on the leaves. And so far, it's looking good, so I'm very happy about that. It is a bit barky, so what I'm doing is filling most of the bed with this compost, and then the top layer, I'm going to put a more fine organic soil on top. I'm not worried about anything that is a plant, but I am going to be starting some things from seed, like more beans, and especially all of my squashes from seed. So I think that more fine layer of the organic soil on top will help it, and then the more barky compost will be underneath. So I'm pretty pleased about that. So here is my green stock that I have planted. I have 5 layers on it right now, but I have 2 more layers. I have 2 of these 7 tiers. We have a cement pad that we leveled out. So you can see one here for the other green stock I'm going to use for the strawberries and herbs. But this is what I have so far. I wanted to get a few things planted. So in these bottom 2 tiers, I have spinach. And you can see that it's sprouting just a little bit on a couple of these. So the bottom 2 are spinach. This tier I did an experiment. I have some cylindrical beets that are sprouting. And I also did some carrots, which don't look to be sprouting yet. I did every other one, but the beets are. And then in these 2, I did some kale. So like I said before, inside for the next 2, I'm probably going to plant out my butter crunch and my iceberg lettuce and see how that goes. In this bed, I had these, what I believe to be our peonies that I planted last year come up. They completely did not do anything when I planted them last year, but then I noticed over winter about a month ago, they started sprouting, but they seem to be thriving. I have one that I planted this year, and that seems to be doing well. And then I had this come up that I'm not exactly sure. Is this also a peony? It's completely different coloring from the others. So I think that's a peony. I also had this come up, which I'm pretty sure is a gladiola because that's where I had them last year. And it's just randomly coming up on its own. So I don't know. We'll have to see how that works out. All right, here's how my broccoli bed is looking. I just planted these out because they were getting way too big for inside. But I have 18 of them in here, and I left space in between because I'm going to be planting some marigolds. I'm going to pick those up at the nursery. But I think marigolds are supposed to be good bug attractors, and hopefully they will be attracted to the marigolds and not eat my broccoli, because I tried a few broccoli starts and cabbage starts last year, and the bugs just completely annihilated them before they even had a chance to grow. So I'm really hoping that won't happen this year, but I'm pretty happy with how my broccoli is doing. They're very thick stems. They've got good big leaves. So when I up potted them, they really thrived. And yeah, I'm quite happy with how these look. We got a layer of compost on here. I'm trying to insulate them with some leaves while it's still a little cold, even though I know broccolis like the cold, but we will see if we get a broccoli harvest this year. All right, that's it for my first year seed starting. I'm pretty pleased with how it turned out. I would say my biggest failures are probably the nasturtiums. I'm also pretty unhappy with how my tomatoes are turning out. I've seen other people's tomatoes and they're beautiful. I don't know if it's just because of lack of nutrients and I need to do a lot better at fertilizing next year, or if I need to go ahead and start them in a lot bigger pots. Some things that I would like to do differently next year is, instead of buying a second set of the really small cells, I wish I had bought a lot of the 4-inch pots and just planted a few. I could fit like 4 plants in each one of those rather than the small ones. And I think everything that I planted in the 4-inch pots did a lot better and they grew a lot faster than the ones that are in the small crowded cells. So I do wish that I had done that, but now I have more infrastructure and more items to rearrange that for next year. So probably we'll start all my tomatoes in bigger pots next year. Let me think. One big thing that I did is I overwatered, and I think that is a big reason why my tomatoes suffered, and it's a lot of the reason why some of the things started to yellow. So like my peppers and the broccoli started to yellow very quickly, is I overwatered. I kept watering whenever I saw the tray underneath was dry, so I bottom watered everything. And I just didn't even think to see if the soil was soaking wet and didn't even need water. I just kept watering every single time I saw the tray was dry. I definitely overwatered. I will not do that again next year. We'll water definitely a lot less, and now I'm always checking the soil to see if it's damp and if it actually needs water. So that's something that I did in my beds last year, but I never started last year, so I just totally forgot that concept for some reason. So big fail was overwatering, but it seems like I've been able to save most things with some dry soil and with a little bit of blood meal. So I think overall it was a pretty good success. Now I feel like I'm over that hurdle, but now I have to transplant everything. And now I have to worry about hardening off, transplant shock, and I don't know, it could all be for naught. So that will be the next step. But we have this garden going on. Everything's getting filled. We've got one more bed. So we are almost ready to start planting things. As long as the weather could just warm up a little bit, that would be great. But hopefully the last of our frost has come. We had a day of 31 yesterday was our low, and so I was pretty disappointed about that. And in the 10-day forecast, May 1st looks like it's a low of 36. So I don't know when will truly be the safe day, but that's okay. I have room to grow. That's why I started everything at kind of the minimum instead of the maximum time, so that things wouldn't get too big and I wouldn't have a cold snap. So we'll see what happens, but thank you for coming along with me on this journey. And we have a big old garden to plant, and I'm so excited for it. So I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.